Let's get cracking on our second discussion for the evening. We're approaching the end of 2025. It's that time where we in the media look back at the best and worst of the year that was. And for me, the most hotly contested, controversial, and quite frankly, mind-boggling best of list is obvious. No, it's not the best goals, songs, movies or shows. No, ladies and gentlemen, with 5 days left in the year, I give you the top 5 best excuses illegal migrants have used to convince lefty judges to remain in the UK, against the wishes of sensible Britons everywhere. An honourable mention, I should say, for a case we have reported on GBNews this afternoon. An Albanian man who was jailed for growing over 200 cannabis plants in the UK has avoided being deported after it was ruled his removal would be harsh on his partner. Armando Ibarhasaj claimed his deportation would breach his rights to a family life with his partner under the ECHR, specifically because his girlfriend didn't speak Albanian. And of course, the Upper Immigration Tribunal judge Sarah Pinder agreed that this outweighed the criminal threat to Britain. And I get it. I was a terrible languages student myself, and Albanian nominal clauses are meant to be a nightmare to get your head around. Strong, but just missing the top 5. In 5th place, we have the Iranian sex toy smuggler running an illegal X-rated toy smuggling ring who was allowed to remain in the UK after arguing that he would be jailed back home for his illicit business activities, constituting a breach of his human rights under the Refugee Convention. What a relief it is that this country is more lenient on criminal sexual deviance, otherwise that would have been disastrous for him. In 4th place, the Albanian criminal allowed to stay in the UK because video calls would be harsh on his stepson. There's that word again. The immigration judge said that modern communication is no substitute for the physical presence of Duratan Mazreku in his 15-year-old stepson's life. Now look, I'm a big fan of face-to-face communication myself, and again, more important than your safety. Taking bronze on the podium, it's the Jamaican drug dealer who avoided deportation after promising he'll only smoke cannabis in the future and not sell it. Sean McLeod was initially given a 3-year and 4-month sentence and initially handed a deportation order. However, after appealing, claiming it would negatively impact his 3 young children and wife, the Immigration Tribunal ruled in his favour. Unsurprisingly, the impact of frequent cannabis use on his family was not taken into consideration. The runner-up is the convicted Zimbabwean pedophile who was allowed to stay in Britain because he would face hostility if he was deported back to his home country for being a pedophile. Good. Thanks a lot, ECHR Article 3. And drum roll, please. The gold medal goes to, who else? The now iconic Albanian criminal whose deportation was halted on first instance, partly because of his young son's aversion to foreign chicken nuggets. A tribute to the UK poultry industry, but a sad reflection on the UK judiciary. We laugh that we may not cry. The lesson from these ridiculous cases is clear. You cannot solve the illegal migrant crisis unless you unwind the tangled legal framework that has enabled it for decades. We must ditch the ECHR, the Human Rights Act and the Refugee Convention in 2026. Please, Labor, make it a New Year's resolution or there will be an equally insane list this time next year. Ladies and gentlemen, don't hold your breath.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living, and maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind the more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
Let's get the thoughts of my panel as I try and increase the speed from the first hour and hope very dearly that I don't fall over. Krista, Linda and Susie, welcome back. Krista, I will start with you. Again, I said we laughed so we may not cry because on face value, it is comical the reasons that some people cook up to remain in this country. But it's, of course, also very serious. Do you think we can solve this problem without untangling that legal framework that I referred to?
Well, I mean, let's firstly talk about the Albanian case, because there's a really, really good way of making sure that your girlfriend, who doesn't speak Albanian, doesn't have to go to Albania to see you if you're deported there. And that is, don't commit crimes in this country when you come over here as an Albanian, and then, therefore, there won't be that problem.
Or get a bit of Albanian language tutor, I suppose. But yes, that's certainly probably the best option.
That would amazingly solve the problem, and it's just like hilarious to me that the idea that she can't go to Albania for some reason. Why? I mean, I thought that all these people loved open borders and everyone travelling right, left and centre, but apparently not. And isn't it amazing the number of people on that list that you read out as well who suddenly care about their family life after they've committed the crimes? Amazing.
Now,
the problem... I think, in principle, I want us to leave the ECHR. I do. I've got a couple of caveats about it, though. Firstly, I think that if we are going to leave, whomever is going to pledge that in their manifesto, I don't want it to be the pledges to leave, then after the election we decide what we do instead. I want the Bill of Rights in their manifesto as to what it would be. I don't want it to be another Brexit where we then spend 4 years talking about it. Secondly, the only other aspect that I worry about is if you look at places like Denmark, they have really, really strict immigration laws. They're members of the ECHR. So some of what we talk about as being frustrating about the ECHR, there are actually political decisions being made by our leaders, successive governments over the years, to have the kinds of laws that actually we don't need the ECHR for.
Sure, this is bigger than just the ECHR, I agree. Susie, this is not just an isolated case. I can point to 100 other examples that I didn't give there. You must concede that with particularly vague laws based on international conventions, like the Human Rights Act, for example, a judge of a particular persuasion can interpret it in any which way they want to suit a particular political agenda. Surely that's what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, look, you list off all those examples and you can't but not feel infuriated. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no way you listen to them and you think, this is taking the mick. And obviously British people hear that and they're going to say, this is taking the mick. This is a misuse, actually, of what it should be. But what I want to say is kind of what has just been said there around Denmark. Actually, there are things that can be done and reform hasn't been attempted. And actually, what Starmer is saying is that we would bring in domestic law changes that would restrict how Article 3 and Article 8 can be used so that they're not abused in this way. And I think it is worth trying that reform first.
The talk's cheap. They've been in government for 18 months now and they had 14 years to plan this stuff out. Like, surely this points to a lack of sincerity if this is just coming out now.
No, I don't think so. Look, again, we've just heard that Denmark have been able to do this. Denmark are part of the ECHR and they have made those changes, which means actually, you know, there's not been the abuse of the ECHR in the way it has been in this country. OK, maybe we've, you know, not been involved for 14 years, but it's 14 years of Tories who could have sorted this out and they didn't. And we've been in for just over a year. But I think they are going to prioritise this, and I think you can see that Shabana Mahmood is meaning business when she talks about this.
Yeah, I kind of like the sound of Shabana Mahmood, but I think what's happening here is that Sir Keir Starmer is suggesting these domestic law changes because it's a kind of halfway house where some of his more militant backbenchers are concerned. I don't think there's a real impetus behind that. I think you'd end up with very half-hearted measures. Now, let me say that 5 years ago, I'd have died on a hill over this, the Court of Human Rights. I absolutely believed it was the right thing. And then I started interviewing people and talking to people in Europe and NATO and the EU, etc., etc. And they all said the problem with the ECHR is that it was built decades and decades ago, and it has absolutely outlived its fitfulness for purpose. We really need to start afresh. And I don't think tinkering around the edges and making a couple of changes to Clause 3 or Clause 8 is really going to do the job.
The thing is, I don't trust this government to be the ones that would be able to do the tinkering, because this government... do I think that tinkering could work? Potentially. We've seen it in Denmark, as we said. The problem is this government is ruled by its backbenchers.
Yes, exactly.
Let's look at the most important piece of legislation that you have annually by a government, the budget. The budget was done, this latest budget, for the backbenchers. It wasn't done for the country, it was done for the backbenchers. And that is what is the raison d'etre of this particular
And what
government.
happened to the benefits bill?
Exactly, all of that.
Look, I hear what you said, but look, you know, I don't know who you trust, because the Tories were in for 14 years and did nothing on this. I think the thing is the toughest talk that there's been on actually reforming it and changing it has come from Shabana Mahmood and Keir Starmer, and they've been in just a year. This is not something you can change straight away, because you've got to do it in the right way. But I think they've made it very clear that they are taking this seriously. Because I say, you can't read those examples and be okay about it. You read those examples, and it is infuriating.
Seriously at all. I don't think it's clear that
they specifically said they're going to change domestic law.
That's just words.
No, I don't think so. I think.
They've
said they wouldn't.
My view.
No, I think they know.
Yeah.
The thing is, you don't go into politics on Labor's side to sort out borders or basically cut spending. You go in for other reasons. And I think what we're getting at, and what I'm hearing is, even if they recognise this as a political problem, in their heart of hearts, they don't have the deepest desire to fix it.
No, they don't. I do not think there's real commitment to sort this issue out. And I think that you're right, Susie, when you say that Conservatives were in for 14 years. I mean, I think that line has done its dash, by the way. But nevertheless, you have a very good point. Things weren't sorted out. They're not being sorted out now, and we need real action to start happening.
I'm going to say, listen, if they don't take this seriously, we know what's going to happen. We know where the British people are on this. There is... people are furious. So I'm going to be honest with you and say, whatever they may feel or think about this, they are going to have to take action. They are going to.
One final point about this is that I really think we also need to move away from this idea that you go to prison for a year and you get deported. I think if you come to the UK
and you break the law
at all, you are out.
Yeah.
You are being just like when a police officer or a member of the judiciary breaks the law. You are in a position of trust that means there is a different threshold to the way you are treated. When you are invited or welcomed into a country, you are given a position of trust. Therefore, if you break that trust, you are gone.
And why can't this woman went out with the Albanian when he was an illegal, an asylum seeker with no legal status, and he's growing cannabis, and she's going out with him? Well, the very first thing she should have done, going out with someone of another nationality, was perhaps learn his language, and then she could go and live there. There's a flourishing tourism industry.
But just to say, Shabana Mahmood, when you look at what she's saying, she's coming down hard on this. And so I think there's got to be a level of coming, let's wait and see what she's going to do.
She's definitely saying the right things. Whether or not we see action in 2026 remains to be seen.
Google Translate. I'm sure they can translate Albanian. Do that.
Yeah, perhaps that's right. And I agree entirely that we should have incredibly high standards for immigrants. If I so much as misspeak on this show, I expect very serious questions to be asked by the Home Office. And there I did just misspeak just there, expecting a knock on the door.